Going live. Looks like I'm live. Hello, viewer. Today is Thursday, August 11th, and YouTube viewer writes to me as a follow-up to my video from the other day, why to not use Ubuntu 20.04 in WSL2 for Linux containers. So the little bit of background to this before I read Scott M's awesome response, and the reason I'm doing this video is to make the point that I'm trying to give the minimal instructions, minimal keystrokes, the easiest magic incantation, yada yada, to get Linux terminal on Windows. Right? It's about the fewest keystrokes. The time is almost right. It's just we're right about there, but there's all these little stumbling blocks that are too much for the noob, the average person, the person unwilling to throw themselves against a problem over and over and over until they get the magic combo. But the reward is big here. So Microsoft will eventually move on from Ubuntu 20.04, where the magic words for WSL2 plus LXD Linux containers are bad. Bad magic words. It's not easy to get 20.04 running with Linux containers, and that's what the Windows subsystem for Linux defaults to when you type WSL install. There's a pretty convoluted process you can do to get it working with 20.04 or to get 18.04 installed instead, and that's where I've been guiding people who wanted to get a little bit ahead of the curve. But Microsoft will eventually be moving its default to 22.04, so I figured let's go to where the ball's being thrown instead of where it's at right now. And a little reminder for people interested in getting involved in Linux containers, the future is LXD. The future is not Linux containers, though not Docker, even though Docker won't be going away. Docker's for consumers. Docker is not for the Linux inclined, those inclined to jump on the Linux bandwagon in a kind of developer and skills for the rest of your life sense, instead of a consumer desktop Linux sense. Desktop Linux isn't Linux, it's just a desktop, right? Mac desktop is just a desktop. Windows desktop is just a desktop. It's hardly an operating system. It's syntactic sugar. The stuff underneath is the Linux in a terminal like this. So let's give it a try. Let's see what Scott says. Been following your series on Linux containers on WSL. On this video, the one about don't use 20.04, from what he could tell from pausing the screen, it looked like it had to do with NFT tables, and he's by no means an expert, but it looks like NFT tables are being replaced by IP tables for Linux firewall, blah, 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 blah. And my error probably occurred because of some networking stuff that gets set up, and it got out of sync. The wizard for LXD and the advances in Ubuntu, they kind of got out of sync, so the wizard stopped working. And he's sure with a lot of Google Fooey could get it working. And long story short, Scott M discovered that the very latest Ubuntu is now available for download, but not in the way that is normally prescribed. So what we do is we open a PowerShell. Once again, I am opening my version of PowerShell where I get rid of the blue and I get it full screen. You know, this is just a nicer PowerShell than that blue one that is the default, but get past that. This is PowerShell. So what you would normally do is WSL install. And that's the easy magic words there. That's how you get Linux onto your desktop. That's how you get a Linux terminal, a lot like the one I do my journal in here, right? If I were to save and quit. I have to do a second quit in order to fully quit because I edit a lot of files at once. And type lsb release all. You'll see that I'm actually running. Well, I did not do that right, did I? Did you mean lsb release? lsb. Oh, release, EASE. Yeah, you can see I'm on 18.04, and you can tell by the way the prompt looks usually. When you see the forward slashes in the prompt, it's like, oh, it's Unix, Linux. When you see the $sign in the prompt, oh, Unix, Linux. So this is actually quite different than this over here, even though they look quite the same. And to get that one you just saw, you run this command. However, this command puts a version of Ubuntu on your machine that is container challenged. So what we can do is list the Ubuntus on our machine. It shows that the 18.04 is what's on my machine and it's the default. But you can also use that command to list what's available online. And unfortunately, it still only goes up to 20.04. But Scott M's discovery is that the Windows Store has 22.04. We just search on Ubuntu and see which ones come up. And looky, 22.04.1 long-term service release. That looks like a good one. Let's go into that. Oh, something happened. Try that again. Oh, let's try a refresh. No, refresh doesn't work. Oh my, let's try and get that in the top thing so we get the install button right there. You see, look, the install buttons are gone. I'm just going to quit out. It's funny, this is live, right? You get to see everything go wrong. There's no editing. I don't edit anyway, so I might as well be live. Buttons are still not showing. That's a little bit of concerning, but maybe the App Store itself needs to be updated. I'll throw in a little bonus here. If you hit, I believed it was the app button. I thought it was the app button. Maybe it's the library button. Somewhere here, yeah, get updates, right? If any of your stuff isn't up to date, you can just hit get update here. And sometimes the Microsoft Store itself, and it was just modified yesterday, so it seems like it has the latest, but maybe we need to get some more updates of our Windows Store installed software to get it working correctly. And while that's going on, I'll pop on over to here and see if anybody's there. Yeah, I lost my one viewer. All right. So if anyone tunes in, feel free to say something. I will be checking up here to see if you're chatting to me. And all right, neither of those two things were what I was hoping for, but we'll try one more time to go into the store and see if we can find a way to download the new Ubuntu. It looked like it was actually listed right there, so maybe I should try that to get it to go into the very top. Was this destined to just not work? What's going on here? It really doesn't want me showing you this. How can I get the Windows Store working? Oh, is this video going to be a big fat fail? Because there's really, what can you do when the Microsoft Store isn't working? So let me continue the discussion, show you some of these tabs I have opened, because in addition to Scott's feedback, which was the source of this video, I wanted to point out that systemd, one of the things we're going to have to still get running, because even Scott, as he tells us how he did it, he still had to go through the distro-d launcher like I had talked about in prior videos. Systemd is still missing, and distro-d gets systemd back onto these Windows-based Linux systems. Systemd was created by this guy, Leonard Pottering, and Leonard Pottering has recently gone to work for Microsoft. So these systemd challenges under Windows Subsystem for Linux, I believe, will be going away because Microsoft just hired the person who wrote that for the Linux free and open source software community. It does not mean that systemd is in danger. Microsoft is throwing a lot of support behind this stuff. So it's actually reason to think it might be getting better, and we won't have to do that extra step. And the last tab I want to show you is that Chrome OS Flex is available for download, and if you have all hardware, Mac or PC, you can actually download Chrome OS, stick it on a USB stick, and install it. Bring some life into your old hardware, and maybe I'll do some screencasting from stuff like that. Why am I trying so hard to stay on Microsoft? Well, it's because I got to stay compatible. There's a lot, 1,000 little death by 1,000 cuts when you try and get off of Microsoft onto a Linux desktop as your primary desktop for a variety of reasons. So, anyone there? 3 views, people pop in, pop out, no one chatted, but I'll give one more go here at this, and then I'll probably remove this video from YouTube, because really, what's the point? The point is showing, maybe I'll title it Microsoft Store has problems. It shows for just a second. And what is that? Something happened on our end. Waiting a bit might help. So what is that? Microsoft Store. Something happened. People must be writing about that and Google that. Restart your computer, launch the Microsoft, sign in again, then attempt downloading again. Removing and adding the Microsoft Store. How do I fix something happened in Microsoft Store? Run the Windows Store Apps Troubleshooter. Enable Microsoft Store Install Service. Sign into the store again. Windows Store App Troubleshooter. What do you think? You think there's any real chance of that being found? Start settings, update and security, Windows Update, check for updates. And it does not really look like the store troubleshooter. Microsoft Store. Select Microsoft Store, select See More, Downloads and Updates, Get Updates. That's what you saw me try and do, right? So it does not seem very hopeful here. There's our various Ubuntus. Is there another 22.04? Because sometimes there's multiple. When you search on just Ubuntu, it used to come up with multiple 20.04s, multiple 18.04s. So they seem to really be working this out in the App Store. It's not worth clicking in again. It's just going to do that and disappear. That's so annoying. Shall we try settings? People, it's telling us to go into settings, and we'll search on Microsoft Store. No results from Microsoft Store. Repair. Fix problem with your computer. What do you think? Fix problem with your computer. Let's see what happens. Security, maintenance, review, recent messages and resolve, recovery, change security. No, none of that looks like what I want. That's not it at all. Apps. Store. Can't uninstall, can't move it. Advanced options. Can't uninstall. Oh, reset. This app isn't, if this app isn't working right, reset it. The app's data will be deleted. Let's reset that app. So that was a full reset of the Microsoft Store. Let's see if that worked. Yeah, it's taking longer to load stuff in, right? Its data was deleted. It has a local database, so it's pulling stuff down again. Ubuntu. Ah, it's even worse than it used to be. We can't even list anything there. Oh, well, there's that. Let's see if we can go into its page directly. Nope, same error. All right, we go out of that. We have settings still loaded. Let's try that repair thing that they were suggesting. I went right to reset, but maybe repair is the magic thing. The whole theme of this video is definitely changing, my goodness. I try to go right into its page again after a repair. Ugh. Microsoft, how you disappoint me. Anyone actually here? Maybe I'll just talk to you folks instead of trying to do this particular thing. Yeah, you should really say something. You're starting to join in. Look, there's 3 of you now. So just to recap for the 3 of you who've joined in, Scott M. gave me some wonderful feedback about how it looks like Linux containers are working well under 22.04, which is now available for download. He installed it through the Microsoft Store, and then he went to the distro D launcher, and then he installed using LXD to create his first container using all the defaults, and LXD was already installed by default, which is, you know, it is under modern Ubuntu's, which is one of the reasons I'm going to it. Canonical is making very certain that this standardizes. This is going the way of something called the KVM, the kernel virtual machine, which got into the kernel itself, is now part of Linux. LXD is going that way. Docker isn't. We got to jump on the LXD bandwagon. And jumping on the LXD bandwagon in the past really meant being on 18.04 if you wanted to accept all the defaults of the wizard to get it going, because there's so many questions. It's question after question. 20.04 is the default that gets installed, but it's really hard to get LXD running. I haven't been able to do it. There's also ambiguity as to whether you get it from the Snap Store or pre-installed or apt install. Very, very ambiguous. And so now it's finally coming into place again, except for the fact that it's not easy to get the latest Ubuntu. Even this way Scott M is recommending, so I am giving it a couple of more tries before I give up and just talk to you folks, which is probably more interesting anyway. So Microsoft Store. Maybe I should launch the store from something else other than my start bar. Who knows? Now that we did a full reset, let's go into library and see if any updates are needed now that a reset was done. Oh boy, it really has gotten bad. Did you mean to switch apps? It's trying to... no, I don't want to go into something like that. These are working, right? These icons are working. That's a surprise. Maybe it's loading stuff in the background. It definitely is fetching stuff from the internet. This is not from a pre-downloaded cache. You can tell by the speed. But having populated a few of those local databases, maybe that changes the picture. Persistence sometimes helps, not in this case. Yeah. All right, people are dropping off. I'm going to wrap this up. It's not going to work. I'll do reboots and whatever and maybe restart the video. Later, Gators.